Rest gently now and let your thoughts grow quiet. Close your eyes as the night air of ancient Greece settles softly around you. In this peaceful journey, we follow Artemis through still forests, moonlit mountains, sacred groves, and calm places where the wild world rests. Her story moves slowly, like silver light across leaves, bringing only quiet, distance, and sleep. Before Artemis became the gentle guardian of forests and wild creatures, the ancient poets told of her peaceful arrival on the island of Delos. Long before the moment of birth, her mother Leto wandered across the Greek world, searching for a place where she could rest. Many lands feared the anger of Hera and quietly turned her away. At last, the floating island of Delos welcomed Leto without hesitation. Surrounded by calm waters and bright morning light, the sacred island became a place of kindness, offering stillness where none had been found before. In early Greek tradition, Delos was said to drift upon the sea until the gods made it secure. Its rocky hills rose gently above clear water, with quiet shores touched by soft waves. The island was not grand because of towering mountains or rich cities. Instead, its beauty rested in simplicity. Olive trees, low shrubs, and open skies created a peaceful landscape where the sounds of wind and sea blended together. Ancient storytellers imagined this quiet place as perfectly suited for a birth that would bring harmony rather than conquest. Leto arrived carrying the twins who would soon enter the world. Though many hardships had filled her journey, the stories slow their pace upon reaching Delos. Here the movement of wandering finally ended. Sacred springs, gentle breezes, and warm sunlight surrounded her with quiet comfort. The island itself became a symbol of welcome, remembered not for wealth or power, but for offering refuge when no other place would. Its calm hospitality became one of the most enduring images in the myths surrounding Artemis. According to the most familiar version of the myth, Artemis was born before her twin brother Apollo. Ancient poets described her arrival as peaceful and graceful, free from loud celebration or conflict. From the very beginning, she carried an unusual calm that reflected the quiet landscapes she would later protect. Her birth did not announce itself with thunder or blazing fire. Instead, it unfolded beside the sea, beneath open skies, where the rhythms of nature quietly marked the passing of time. Some ancient traditions tell that Artemis immediately showed remarkable strength and compassion. Soon after her own birth, she helped her mother during the birth of Apollo. This gentle story later connected Artemis not only with the wilderness, but also with childbirth and the protection of mothers. The goddess who would roam forests with confidence first appeared as a quiet source of assistance. Even in infancy, the myths suggest balance, patience, and care rather than displays of force. The palm tree of Delos became one of the island's most treasured symbols. Ancient visitors believed it marked the place where Leto rested during the birth of her children. Pilgrims who later arrived on Delos treated the site with deep respect, seeing the tree as a quiet witness to one of the most sacred moments in Greek mythology. Whether growing from history or memory, the palm represented endurance, shelter, and the gentle generosity of the island itself. As Artemis grew in the imagination of Greek storytellers, the peaceful character of her birth remained closely connected to her nature. She became associated with moonlit hills, untouched forests, clear springs, and the silent movement of animals through the trees. Unlike many gods whose stories often centered on cities or palaces, Artemis was remembered in places where human voices faded into birdsong, wind, and distant flowing water. Her earliest moments on Delos seem to quietly foreshadow that lifelong bond. Delos itself gradually became one of the most sacred religious centers in the Greek world. Temples, offerings, and festivals honored the divine twins who were believed to have entered life there. Yet beneath these celebrations remained the older memory of a peaceful island that simply opened its shores to someone in need. The myth quietly reminds listeners that sacred places are sometimes created not through conquest, but through acts of welcome and compassion. The sea surrounding Delos plays an important role in many retellings of the myth. Gentle waves separate the island from the wider world, creating a feeling of quiet protection. Water reflects the changing light from sunrise to moonrise, while the horizon stretches without interruption. Such peaceful surroundings suit the slow rhythm of bedtime storytelling, allowing the imagination to linger upon calm landscapes where the divine and the natural exist without haste. Ancient hymns often praise Artemis for her independence and graceful movement through wild places. Looking back toward her birth, these qualities seem almost present from the beginning. Delos offered freedom rather than confinement, open skies instead of walls, and quiet landscapes instead of crowded streets. The goddess who would one day walk mountain paths first entered the world in a place where nature remained the closest companion. Although later artists often portrayed Artemis carrying a bow, the stories of her earliest moments contain no need for weapons. Her birth belongs to a gentler chapter of mythology. It speaks of shelter, family, and peaceful beginnings rather than heroic contests. This quiet contrast helps explain why Artemis could embody both strength and serenity, protecting the natural world while remaining closely connected to its calm rhythms. The island winds, the quiet sea, and the sacred palm together form a simple picture that has endured for thousands of years. Even as Greek myths expanded into countless adventures, the birth of Artemis remained remarkably serene. Its gentle atmosphere continues to invite reflection, suggesting that greatness sometimes begins in silence, surrounded not by crowds but by open landscapes and patient nature. As evening settles across imagined Delos, the island becomes still once more. The bright sunlight softens into pale moonlight, and the sea reflects quiet silver across its surface. It is easy to picture the sacred place resting exactly as the old poets described it: calm, welcoming, and timeless. The peaceful beginning of Artemis remains woven into every breeze and every wave, quietly echoing through the landscapes she would forever call home. Remembering the birth of Artemis invites the mind toward gentle stillness rather than dramatic action. The ancient myth begins not with triumph, but with refuge, kindness, and the quiet beauty of a small island surrounded by endless water. In that peaceful setting, one of Greece's most beloved goddesses entered the world. The calm of Delos became part of her story forever, lingering like the sound of distant waves long after the tale gently moves onward. Long before quiet shrines stood beneath the pines, Artemis first entered the world on the gentle island of Delos. Ancient poets told how her mother, Leto, found refuge there after many difficult wanderings. The island itself became a peaceful place of welcome, where the wind crossed rocky hills and the sea rested softly against bright shores. From her earliest moments, Artemis belonged to open landscapes rather than grand palaces. Her story began with calm horizons, clean air, and the quiet rhythm of waves meeting stone beneath a wide and patient sky. Many ancient traditions describe Artemis as arriving before her twin brother, Apollo. Though still newly born, she was already associated with calm strength and quiet purpose. Some stories gently imagine her helping her mother during Apollo's birth, not through force, but through natural wisdom granted by the gods. This early image became a symbol of protection and care, qualities that remained with Artemis throughout Greek mythology. Even in infancy, she was portrayed as composed, observant, and closely connected to life's gentle beginnings. As Artemis grew, the mountains became her favorite home. Forest paths, rocky slopes, and flowering meadows welcomed her silent footsteps. She preferred places where streams moved slowly through moss-covered stones and where birds announced the changing seasons. Unlike many Olympian gods, whose stories often unfolded inside glittering halls, Artemis was most often imagined beneath open skies. Her presence belonged to landscapes that asked for little except careful attention, allowing every breeze and every distant call of wildlife to become part of her quiet world. The silver light of the moon gradually became one of Artemis' most familiar symbols. Although earlier traditions connected the moon with other divine figures, later Greek imagination closely linked Artemis with its calm glow across forests and hills. Moonlight did not rush or command attention. Instead, it revealed gentle outlines of trees, distant ridges, and quiet valleys. In this soft illumination, Artemis became a guardian of peaceful nighttime journeys, when the natural world settled into slower rhythms beneath countless quiet stars. Ancient artists often portrayed Artemis carrying a simple bow. It represented skill learned through patience rather than conflict. The bow reminded people that careful observation always came before action. In the stillness of the forest, every movement mattered and every creature deserved understanding. Rather than celebrating battle, these stories often emphasized harmony with nature. Artemis knew the paths of deer, the nesting places of birds, and the changing seasons, becoming a figure whose wisdom grew from listening carefully to the living world. The forests of Greece offered endless variety throughout the year. Spring filled the hills with wildflowers, while summer brought warm breezes beneath tall oaks. Autumn scattered golden leaves across narrow paths, and winter covered higher slopes with quiet frost. Artemis belonged equally to every season. Her presence reflected the steady cycles of nature rather than moments of sudden change. Through every passing month, the hills remained familiar companions, gently reminding travelers that peace often returns with each new season. Animals walked freely through the landscapes associated with Artemis. Deer appeared most often beside her in ancient art, moving with graceful caution through woodland clearings. They symbolized gentleness, alertness, and balance within the natural world. Other creatures also belonged to her forests, each living according to its own quiet rhythm. Rather than ruling through fear, Artemis watched over these wild places as their careful protector, allowing each life to unfold beneath the changing light of sun, stars, and moon. Greek poets frequently described distant hills where silence carried farther than voices. In such places, soft winds traveled through tall grasses, while streams reflected patches of sky between overhanging branches. These peaceful settings became natural homes for Artemis. They were not places of loneliness, but of gentle companionship with the earth itself. Every stone, tree, and flowing spring quietly belonged to the larger harmony that shaped her world, inviting calm rather than excitement into each passing moment. Artemis remained closely connected with youth throughout many ancient traditions. Young people sometimes looked to her as a guardian during important stages of growing older. This role reflected protection rather than authority. Like the gradual opening of flowers in spring, growth was understood as something that unfolded naturally with time. Artemis stood beside these quiet transformations without hurry, honoring the steady pace through which nature itself allows every living thing to mature. Unlike stories centered upon great cities, many tales of Artemis unfolded far from crowded streets. Her temples were often built beside forests, springs, or hillsides where worshippers could hear birdsong and flowing water. These sacred places blended gently into the surrounding landscape. Stone columns rose among trees instead of replacing them. Visitors approached slowly, understanding that the natural world itself formed part of the sanctuary's quiet beauty and enduring peace. The gentle glow of dawn also suited Artemis well. Before the warmth of midday arrived, forests remained cool and still. Mist drifted across valleys while birds slowly welcomed the morning. These peaceful hours reflected the quiet balance she represented. Nothing hurried the arrival of daylight. Instead, each moment unfolded naturally, revealing familiar paths and distant hills little by little beneath soft golden light. Ancient storytellers rarely separated Artemis from the landscapes she loved. Mountains, rivers, forests, and moonlit skies formed a single harmonious picture. Her identity grew from these places rather than standing apart from them. By walking gently through the wilderness, she became a reminder that strength could exist alongside calmness. Nature did not need loud displays to reveal its beauty. Quiet persistence was enough. Even centuries later, images of Artemis continue to inspire peaceful thoughts about untouched landscapes. Sculptures showed calm expressions, simple clothing, and graceful movement rather than displays of royal luxury. Artists remembered her as a figure of open air, clear water, and silent hills. Through these enduring images, the forests of ancient Greece remained alive in memory, filled with gentle moonlight and the quiet promise of another tranquil night. As evening settled across the hills once more, silver light returned to familiar valleys and peaceful woods. Streams reflected the moon, leaves stirred softly in the breeze, and distant mountains rested beneath a calm sky. Within this quiet world, Artemis remained exactly where generations of storytellers imagined her, walking gentle paths, watching over wild places, and allowing every peaceful corner of nature to continue its timeless rhythm without interruption. The forests loved by Artemis were imagined as peaceful places where tall pines, ancient oaks, and quiet streams shared the same gentle rhythm. Unlike the crowded cities of Greece, these woodlands belonged to the slow movements of nature. Every breeze carried the scent of herbs and wildflowers, while birds greeted the dawn with soft songs. Hunters entered such places carefully, knowing they walked through lands especially dear to the goddess. In these sacred groves, the silence itself was treated with respect, and every living creature seemed to rest beneath the calm protection of Artemis, whose presence was felt more often than it was seen. Among all the creatures of the wilderness, the deer became the animal most closely connected with Artemis. Graceful, swift, and alert, deer reflected the gentle independence that poets admired in the goddess herself. They moved quietly through the trees, leaving only the faintest marks upon the earth. Ancient storytellers imagined Artemis watching over their peaceful lives, allowing them to roam freely beneath the silver light of the moon. To harm a deer without need was sometimes described as an act that disturbed the natural balance protected by the divine guardian of wild places. Not every sacred animal of Artemis was gentle in appearance. Bears also belonged to her traditions, especially in regions where these powerful creatures still wandered the mountains. The bear represented strength joined with careful motherhood, qualities that Greek worshippers sometimes associated with the goddess. In certain festivals, young girls honored Artemis through rituals inspired by bears, symbolizing a respectful passage from childhood toward maturity. These customs reflected admiration for the rhythms of nature rather than fear, reminding communities that even great strength could exist peacefully within the living world. Hounds also accompanied Artemis in many stories. These loyal hunting dogs were celebrated for their sharp senses, endurance, and unwavering devotion. Yet in peaceful moments, they rested quietly beside their divine companion beneath the shade of tall trees or beside cool springs. Ancient artists often showed the goddess with one or more faithful hounds, emphasizing harmony between humans and animals rather than conquest. Together, they traveled through valleys and hills, moving gently across landscapes that seemed untouched by the passing of ordinary time. Birdsong filled the mornings of Artemis forests long before the first travelers arrived. Small birds nested among branches heavy with green leaves, while larger birds circled high above open meadows. Their songs marked the changing hours without hurry, creating a quiet music that belonged entirely to the wilderness. Greek poets often described such sounds as part of the goddess's domain, suggesting that every feathered creature contributed to the peaceful order she protected. Nothing needed to be commanded, because nature followed its own patient rhythm. Fresh water held special importance within the landscape sacred to Artemis. Springs emerged from rocky hillsides, feeding clear streams that wandered through forests before joining larger rivers. Animals gathered there without conflict, drinking quietly before returning to the shelter of the trees. These places offered calm not only to wildlife, but also to travelers seeking rest from long journeys. The gentle sound of flowing water became another symbol of the goddess's presence, suggesting life that continued steadily through every changing season. Moonlight transformed the forests after sunset. Silver light rested upon leaves, softened rough stones, and reflected gently from still pools of water. Artemis, closely connected with the moon in later Greek tradition, seemed especially at home during these quiet hours. The darkness was never portrayed as empty or frightening, but as a peaceful companion to the natural world. Animals continued their lives beneath the stars, guided by instincts as old as the mountains themselves, while the forests remained calm and undisturbed. The Greeks believed that sacred groves deserved special care because they belonged to the gods. Trees within these protected places were often left standing for generations, growing wider and taller with every passing century. Artemis groves represented more than beautiful scenery. They reminded people that nature possessed its own dignity and deserved thoughtful respect. Entering such a place invited silence, careful footsteps, and gratitude for the living world that surrounded every visitor with quiet generosity. Wildflowers spread naturally across open clearings, changing with each season. Spring covered the hills with bright blossoms, while summer filled the air with the scent of herbs warmed by gentle sunlight. Bees drifted patiently from flower to flower, continuing work that required no audience and no celebration. Such simple moments reflected the peaceful balance associated with Artemis. Nothing hurried the passing of the seasons, and every bloom appeared at its proper time before quietly returning to the earth. Mountain slopes formed another part of Artemis' peaceful domain. Rocky paths wound upward between pines until they reached quiet ridges overlooking valleys below. From these heights, the forests appeared endless, stretching toward distant horizons where sea and sky nearly met. The cool mountain air carried little sound except the wind passing through branches. Such landscapes reminded ancient storytellers that the goddess belonged wherever nature remained strong, free, and beautifully undisturbed. Many artists portrayed Artemis carrying a bow, yet the bow itself symbolized skill, discipline, and harmony with nature, rather than constant conflict. In peaceful stories, it rested quietly across her shoulder as she walked through forests accompanied by animals. The image suggested readiness without aggression, reflecting the balanced character admired in the goddess. Her strength existed alongside calm judgment, and both qualities were considered necessary for protecting the wilderness she loved. The changing seasons gently reshaped Artemis forests throughout the year. Fresh leaves appeared in spring, rich green canopies shaded the summer paths, Golden colors brightened autumn hills, and winter revealed the quiet forms of bare branches beneath open skies. Every season held equal beauty, and none remained forever. Greek mythology often accepted these natural cycles with calm understanding, seeing renewal and rest as equally important parts of the world's enduring order. Pilgrims sometimes visited sanctuaries dedicated to Artemis near forests, springs, or mountain valleys rather than inside busy cities. These sacred places reflected the character of the goddess herself. Stone temples stood quietly beside living landscapes instead of replacing them. Worshippers offered thanks with respect, recognizing that divine presence could be felt through flowing water, ancient trees, and the peaceful movement of wildlife as much as through carefully carved marble. As night settled fully across the hills, the forests of Artemis returned to complete stillness. Deer rested among the trees, birds tucked themselves safely into hidden branches, and streams continued their gentle songs beneath the stars. Nothing demanded attention, and nothing disturbed the quiet balance of the wilderness. The ancient Greeks imagined that the goddess remained nearby, watching over every peaceful corner of the wild with calm vigilance, allowing the forests and all their sacred animals to rest beneath the soft light of the moon. As evening settled across ancient Greece, familiar roads became quiet ribbons beneath the gentle glow of the moon. Hills softened into silver shapes, and olive groves rested beneath cool air scented with pine and thyme. These peaceful paths were often imagined as places where Artemis moved with calm certainty, her presence gentle rather than hurried. Travelers who respected the forests believed the night belonged not to fear alone, but also to silence, reflection, and careful footsteps. Under the steady light of the moon, the countryside revealed another kind of beauty, one that invited patience and rewarded those who walked with quiet hearts. Artemis was closely associated with the moon in later Greek tradition, where her calm radiance complemented the brightness of daylight ruled by her twin brother, Apollo. While poets describe the changing sky in many different ways across the centuries, they often imagined Artemis moving gracefully beneath the stars. Her light did not overwhelm the landscape. Instead, it gently revealed narrow trails, quiet streams, and sleeping trees. The world seemed to breathe more slowly beneath her watch, allowing every hill, meadow, and rocky slope to rest in peaceful balance until dawn gradually returned. Ancient footpaths connected villages, sanctuaries, farms, and mountain passes. During the cool hours of night, these roads became quieter than they had been during the busy daylight. Crickets filled the air with steady songs while distant owls called from hidden branches. The moon illuminated pale stones embedded in the earth, making familiar routes appear almost new. In stories inspired by Artemis, such peaceful journeys reflected respect for nature rather than conquest of it. Every step became part of the landscape instead of interrupting its calm rhythm. The forests sacred to Artemis were imagined as places where animals moved freely according to their own quiet patterns. Deer wandered between tall trees, foxes crossed open clearings, and small birds settled into hidden nests. Nothing needed to hurry. Every creature followed rhythms shaped by the turning seasons and the steady passage of the moon above. Artemis protected these peaceful cycles, reminding those who honored her that the wilderness possessed its own gentle order, one deserving admiration rather than disturbance. Moonlight softened even rugged mountains, smoothing sharp cliffs into gentle outlines against the sky. High above the valleys, cool breezes carried the scent of cedar and wild herbs. Travelers resting on these slopes could see distant villages glowing faintly with scattered lamps before sleep claimed them. Artemis, often connected with mountains and wild highlands, belonged naturally to these quiet places where silence stretched across long distances, and every sound seemed carried gently through the night air. Sacred springs hidden among rocks reflected the moon with remarkable clarity. Water moved slowly over smooth stones, creating soft sounds that blended with the evening wind. Such places were often regarded as peaceful retreats where divine presence could be quietly imagined. Artemis, associated with pure waters and untouched landscapes, fit naturally into these tranquil settings. The steady flow of each spring reminded listeners that calm persistence often lasts far longer than loud moments of excitement. The temples dedicated to Artemis often stood near forests, hills, or places where nature remained especially beautiful. Even after worshippers returned home for the evening, these sanctuaries rested quietly beneath the stars. Marble columns reflected pale moonlight, while nearby trees swayed almost silently. The buildings themselves became part of the landscape rather than standing apart from it, expressing the close relationship between the goddess and the peaceful wilderness surrounding every sacred site. In many myths, Artemis carried a bow crafted not merely as a weapon, but as a symbol of precision, discipline, and balance. During peaceful nights, poets imagined the bow resting quietly across her shoulder while no hunt disturbed the stillness. Its curved shape echoed the gentle arc of the moon above. Rather than suggesting conflict, it reflected readiness joined with restraint, qualities admired throughout many stories told about the goddess across generations. The night sky above Greece displayed countless stars beyond the bright face of the moon. Shepherds, sailors, and travelers became familiar with these lights through long years of careful observation. Beneath such skies, Artemis represented calm guidance through darkness without needing loud displays or grand announcements. The heavens themselves seemed patient, turning slowly from east to west, while the landscape below rested in peaceful silence until morning returned. Gentle winds moved through cypress and pine, carrying cool air across quiet valleys. Leaves whispered softly without breaking the stillness. Such sounds formed part of the nightly world that ancient listeners knew well before cities grew bright with artificial light. Artemis belonged naturally within this quiet atmosphere, where every breeze, branch, and distant stream contributed to a harmony that required no audience and expected no applause. Wildflowers that had brightened the hills during daylight now rested beneath silver light, their colors hidden but their shapes still graceful. The landscape became simpler as shadows softened every detail. Ancient poets often found beauty in this quiet transformation, where nothing disappeared completely but everything became calmer. Artemis was imagined moving easily through such places, understanding both the lively daylight world and the peaceful silence that followed sunset. Rivers crossing the Greek countryside reflected long paths of shimmering light from the moon above. Their steady movement continued whether anyone watched or not. Along these quiet banks, reeds swayed gently while smooth stones rested beneath clear water. Artemis, whose stories often unfolded beside untouched landscapes, represented a respectful companionship with nature, allowing every stream and woodland to remain peaceful within its own timeless rhythm. As the deepest hours of night approached, the world became even more still. Animals settled into rest, breezes slowed, and distant mountains blended softly into the horizon. Moonlight remained constant across fields and forests, quietly marking the passing hours without haste. The stories of Artemis invited listeners to appreciate this gentle interval between busy days, when the earth itself seemed content simply to exist in silence beneath the stars. Eventually, the eastern horizon hinted at the first pale colors of approaching dawn. The moon slowly surrendered its place as daylight prepared to return. Artemis withdrew gently from the night's quiet paths, leaving forests, rivers, and hills exactly as they had always been, peaceful, enduring, and ready to welcome another evening. Her stories remained woven into the landscape itself, where every moonlit trail continued to suggest calm journeys through the timeless beauty of ancient Greece. Among the many quiet responsibilities given to Artemis, one was especially gentle. Ancient Greeks honored her as a protector of children, especially girls as they grew from infancy toward adulthood. Parents offered small gifts at her sanctuaries, asking that each season of growth pass safely. Her presence was imagined not as loud intervention, but as a calm watchfulness that rested over homes, village paths, and shaded groves. Like moonlight settling across a peaceful hillside, her care was thought to arrive softly, bringing reassurance through the steady rhythm of nature itself. Many communities believed that healthy growth followed the same quiet patterns found throughout the natural world. Young saplings stretched upward little by little, birds learned to fly through patient practice, and children also matured one day at a time. Artemis became a symbol of this peaceful unfolding. Her protection reflected the gentle pace of the seasons rather than sudden miracles. The forests under her care reminded worshippers that strength often develops silently, almost unnoticed, until one day it stands as naturally as an ancient oak. In several regions of Greece, girls visited sanctuaries dedicated to Artemis before important moments in their lives. These ceremonies marked quiet transitions rather than dramatic transformations. Clothing, toys, or locks of hair could be dedicated as tokens of gratitude for childhood now gently passing. Such offerings reflected respect for each stage of life, acknowledging that every beginning eventually gives way to another peaceful chapter. Artemis stood beside these changes as a calm guardian, allowing each season to arrive in its own proper time. One of the best-known places connected with this tradition was Broron in Attica. There, festivals honored Artemis with ceremonies involving young girls preparing for future adulthood. Historians continue to study the precise meaning of every custom, yet the central idea remains clear. Childhood was treasured, protected, and gently celebrated before new responsibilities appeared. The sanctuary itself rested beside wetlands and quiet hills, where birds, flowing water, and open skies reflected the peaceful atmosphere surrounding the goddess's care. Although Artemis is often remembered as a huntress, her relationship with wild creatures was balanced rather than destructive. She watched over young animals just as she guarded human children. Fawns, bear cubs, and nesting birds belonged to the same living landscape that inspired reverence. Hunting itself was expected to follow respectful limits, acknowledging that the forests could only continue to flourish when life remained in harmony. Protection and restraint quietly existed together beneath her watchful presence. The Greeks often understood divine care through familiar scenes in nature. Dawn returned each morning without hurry. Rivers continued their patient journeys toward the sea. Leaves unfolded one after another with every spring. Artemis embodied this dependable rhythm. Her guardianship suggested that life did not need to rush forward. Every child, every tree, and every living creature possessed its own season for growing stronger, guided by the same steady order that shaped mountains, forests, and stars. Expectant mothers also looked toward Artemis, despite the paradox that she herself remained forever unmarried. Mythology describes her assisting her mother, Leto, during the birth of Apollo soon after Artemis's own remarkable birth. This story connected her with safe childbirth in many traditions. Temples dedicated to her sometimes received prayers from families hoping for peaceful deliveries, healthy infants, and calm recoveries. allowing the beginning of new life to unfold beneath divine protection. The forests sacred to Artemis were imagined as places where young life could flourish undisturbed. Gentle breezes moved through pine branches, birds rested among quiet leaves, and clear springs reflected the sky without interruption. Such landscapes became symbols of safety itself. To step into these sacred places was to enter a world where growth occurred naturally, without needless disturbance, guided only by sunlight, rainfall, and the quiet cycles that had shaped Greece for countless generations. Many offerings left for Artemis were simple rather than extravagant. Small figurines, woven garments, fruit, flowers, or carefully crafted objects expressed gratitude instead of wealth. The value rested in sincerity rather than rarity. These quiet gifts reflected an understanding that care is often shown through modest actions repeated faithfully over time. Like tending a garden or planting an olive tree, devotion became another gentle rhythm woven into everyday life. Ancient storytellers often described Artemis moving silently across hills illuminated by moonlight. Her footsteps disturbed neither grasses nor sleeping animals. This peaceful image helped shape her reputation as a guardian who observed without overwhelming the world she protected. Rather than commanding constant attention, she remained a quiet presence beyond the trees, allowing the wild to continue its own calm existence beneath the silver light of the evening sky. Children growing beneath Artemis's protection were understood to belong not only to their families, but also to the wider order of nature. Just as rivers eventually reached the sea and seeds matured into grain, each young life followed a path that deserved patience. This belief encouraged communities to honor gradual development instead of hurried expectation. Time itself became a trusted companion, carrying every generation forward with quiet consistency. The moon, so closely associated with Artemis in later traditions, became another symbol of gentle change. It never remained exactly the same from one night to the next, yet always returned in familiar cycles. Childhood, too, was seen as a series of gradual phases rather than sudden leaps. Watching the moon cross the heavens reminded worshippers that steady change could be beautiful, predictable, and deeply comforting. Even centuries later, the image of Artemis continues to evoke peaceful woodlands, careful guardianship, and respect for every stage of life. Her stories remind readers that strength may appear quietly, growing through patience rather than force. The calm forest she represented offered a timeless vision of balance, where every living creature found its place within a wider harmony shaped by earth, sky, water, and the gentle passing of the seasons. As the night grows still, the figure of Artemis fades gently into the silver landscape she has always watched over. The hills remain peaceful, the trees whisper softly, and distant stars continue their patient journeys across the sky. Nothing rushes, nothing strains, and every living thing rests within the quiet order of the natural world. Her guardianship lingers not as a command, but as a calm presence carried by moonlight across the timeless forests of ancient Greece. High among quiet hills, where the air carried the scent of pine and thyme, simple sanctuaries honored Artemis without great noise or endless ceremony. Many of her sacred places stood close to forests, caves, or clear springs rather than crowded cities. Stone altars rested beneath open skies, allowing the changing light of dawn and moonrise to become part of every offering. Those who climbed these peaceful paths entered a landscape that already felt devoted to the goddess. The silence itself became a gentle companion, as though every breeze through the leaves joined an ancient hymn that required no human voice to complete it. Fresh springs often flowed beside the places dedicated to Artemis, their clear waters reflecting branches that leaned gently above them. In Greek tradition, living water carried ideas of purity and renewal, making these quiet pools fitting companions for a goddess connected with untouched nature. Travelers paused beside them to wash away the dust of long roads before approaching nearby shrines. The steady movement of water asked for nothing except patient attention. Long after each visitor continued onward, the spring remained unchanged, following the same calm course through stone and moss as countless seasons quietly passed. Many sanctuaries devoted to Artemis stood where mountain slopes met wide valleys, allowing distant horizons to stretch beneath open skies. Such places reflected the freedom associated with the goddess, whose stories often unfolded beyond city walls. Shepherds, hunters, and travelers recognized these high landscapes as familiar companions rather than empty wilderness. From rocky paths came broad views of forests, rivers, and distant villages, all resting together beneath changing clouds. The quiet height encouraged slow observation, reminding every visitor that the natural world offered its own steady rhythm without haste or interruption. The sanctuary at Broron became one of the best-known places honoring Artemis in Attica. There, sacred buildings stood beside a small river and gentle wetlands where birds gathered throughout the year. Young girls participated in religious ceremonies connected with the goddess, marking important moments in their journey toward adulthood. These traditions reflected Artemis as a protector of children and young people, as well as wild creatures. The surrounding landscape remained an essential part of worship, blending flowing water, open fields, and quiet woodland into a setting that encouraged calm reflection. At Ephesus, Artemis was honored in a form that differed from many Greek traditions, while remaining deeply respected throughout the ancient world. The magnificent temple there became one of history's great architectural achievements, yet devotion extended beyond its impressive columns. Pilgrims arrived seeking blessings, protection, and hope, carrying offerings with careful hands before returning to their homes. Even such a celebrated sanctuary preserved moments of remarkable stillness. At dawn, before crowds gathered, light slowly crossed the marble, allowing the immense structure to appear almost as peaceful as the surrounding countryside. Not every sacred place required grand buildings. Some consisted only of a weathered altar beneath an ancient oak or a clearing surrounded by tall cypress trees. The Greeks often understood that holiness could dwell wherever nature remained respected and undisturbed. Artemis, more than many Olympian gods, was closely associated with these simpler places. A quiet grove needed little decoration beyond birdsong, moving leaves, and shafts of sunlight falling across the forest floor. Such landscapes invited gentle presence instead of spectacle, offering peace through their very simplicity. Moonlight transformed mountain sanctuaries into places of quiet silver. Pale light rested upon stone walls, traced narrow paths, and shimmered across still pools gathered between rocks. Although Artemis was not originally the moon itself, later Greek and Roman traditions increasingly linked her with its gentle glow. These associations deepened the feeling that nighttime belonged to careful observation rather than fear. Under calm skies, familiar trees became graceful silhouettes, while every distant sound carried softly through the cool air without disturbing the peaceful balance of the landscape. Wildflowers often surrounded Artemis' sacred places, blooming according to the quiet calendar of the seasons rather than the wishes of people. Bright anemones, lilies, crocuses, and fragrant herbs appeared after winter rains or beneath warm spring sunlight. Their brief flowering reminded observers that beauty did not depend upon permanence. Each blossom opened for its appointed time before gently fading, making room for those yet to come. In this steady cycle, The landscape itself seemed to participate in the goddess's enduring care for living things. Animals moved freely through many of Artemis' sacred landscapes. Deer crossed woodland paths with careful steps, birds nested among quiet branches, and small creatures disappeared into grasses as gently as passing shadows. These living neighbors were not simply decorations around a sanctuary, but reminders of the goddess's role as protector of wildlife. Watching them encouraged patience rather than pursuit. Their calm presence reflected a world where every creature occupied its own rightful place within the larger harmony of forests, streams, and mountains. Pilgrims climbing toward mountain shrines often carried simple offerings rather than extravagant gifts. Fresh flowers, woven garlands, carefully shaped cakes, or small figures crafted from clay expressed gratitude with quiet sincerity. Greek religion emphasized respectful acts performed in proper balance, allowing modest offerings to hold meaningful value. After prayers ended, the landscape remained much as it had before. Wind continued through the trees, water continued across stone, and the sanctuary settled once again into its familiar silence beneath the open sky. Caves also became places associated with Artemis in various local traditions. Their cool interiors sheltered echoes instead of sunlight, creating spaces where dripping water marked the gentle passage of time. Ancient Greeks often viewed caves as natural thresholds connected with divine stories, birth, or hidden places of the earth. Within such quiet chambers, the outside world seemed wonderfully distant. Every sound softened into patient rhythm, inviting slow thought while the surrounding mountain guarded its peaceful interior through countless generations. Season after season, these sanctuaries witnessed the same enduring cycles. Snow rested briefly upon distant peaks before melting into streams. Spring covered hillsides with new green, while summer filled the forests with warm fragrance. Autumn painted leaves with gentle color before winter returned once more. The sacred places changed with every season without losing their quiet identity. Artemis remained connected to this continual renewal, reminding ancient worshippers that nature's calm persistence carried its own enduring wisdom across the passing years. Even after many temples fell into ruin, their settings often retained the peaceful character that first inspired devotion. Broken columns rested among grasses, springs continued to flow, and birds nested where priests once walked. Time altered stone more easily than it altered the surrounding hills. Visitors today may still discover these quiet places and sense how naturally they belong within forests and mountains. The silence that welcomed ancient travelers continues to linger, carried gently by wind through enduring trees. Across Greece, the sanctuaries of Artemis formed a gentle network connecting forests, springs, valleys, islands, and mountains. Each possessed its own landscape and local traditions, yet all reflected respect for the peaceful strength of the natural world. Rather than separating sacred places from their surroundings, they allowed hills, flowing water, trees, and open skies to become part of worship itself. In their lasting quiet, these sanctuaries preserved a simple lesson. Calm beauty often speaks most clearly where human voices fade and nature continues its patient song. Artemis was often remembered not only for her skill with the bow, but for the quiet space she kept around herself. Ancient stories describe her moving through forests and mountain valleys without seeking company. Her companions were chosen carefully, and her independence was never presented as loneliness. Instead, it reflected a peaceful order that belonged to the wild itself. Streams flowed without interruption, deer wandered without command, and moonlight rested gently across silent hills. Those who understood Artemis accepted that some sacred places were meant to remain undisturbed, carrying their calm simply because no one tried to possess them. Many myths surrounding Artemis are less about punishment than about boundaries. Ancient Greek listeners understood that gods represented natural order as much as divine personalities. Artemis protected places where animals nested, springs emerged, and quiet life continued without disturbance. Respect meant recognizing limits before crossing them. The forests under her care were not hidden because they were dangerous alone, but because they deserved reverence. In this way, distance itself became peaceful. It allowed every creature to remain where it naturally belonged, without fear, haste, or unnecessary intrusion. Among Artemis' most familiar symbols was the untouched grove, where tall trees created gentle shade and soft silence. Such places appeared throughout Greek imagination as spaces apart from ordinary life. Travelers might pass nearby without entering, understanding that not every path needed to be followed. The grove existed for birds, gentle winds, quiet streams, and the goddess herself. By leaving it undisturbed, people honored something larger than themselves. The stillness of the place became a form of worship, requiring no offerings beyond respectful distance. The story of Actaeon illustrates one of the clearest lessons about respect for divine privacy. While hunting, he unexpectedly came upon Artemis bathing in a secluded spring. The encounter was accidental, yet the myth reminds listeners that certain sacred moments cannot simply be observed without consequence. Ancient audiences understood this tale as a reflection on boundaries rather than curiosity alone. Artemis remained a guardian of spaces where solitude carried its own holiness, untouched by ordinary human attention. Artemis also valued silence during the hunt. Ancient poets often imagined her moving lightly through woodland paths, her footsteps scarcely noticed by leaves or branches. Success did not come from noise or force, but from careful attention to every movement of wind and animal. The calm rhythm of the forest encouraged patience above haste. In these stories, quiet observation became a form of wisdom, allowing every action to arise naturally from the landscape itself. The moon accompanied Artemis in later traditions, casting gentle light over hills and forests after sunset. Moonlight softened the edges of stones, branches, and distant valleys, encouraging slower movement through familiar places. Nothing needed to be hurried beneath its quiet glow. The goddess became associated with this peaceful rhythm, where the world remained visible yet calm. The night itself seemed to invite careful steps, measured thoughts, and restful silence instead of restless activity. Animals in the myths of Artemis were rarely portrayed as possessions. Deer, bears, hares, and birds remained free, moving according to their own nature. The goddess protected this balance rather than controlling it. Ancient storytellers described harmony arising when humans observed wildlife with restraint instead of domination. Distance allowed both people and animals to flourish. Every creature followed its own quiet path, while Artemis watched over the shared order of the natural world. Sacred springs dedicated to Artemis appeared throughout the Greek world. Fresh water emerged steadily from stone, nourishing plants and animals with gentle consistency. Such places encouraged moments of rest rather than celebration. Pilgrims approached with calm attention, appreciating the quiet gift of flowing water. The myths surrounding these springs reflected the enduring rhythm of nature itself, where life continued patiently through seasons without demanding recognition or praise. Artemis never sought grand palaces filled with endless ceremonies. Her presence belonged more naturally to mountain ridges, open valleys, and shaded forests. These landscapes changed slowly across generations, shaped by wind, rain, and time rather than human ambition. Ancient Greeks found comfort in this constancy. While cities expanded and rulers changed, the hills remained peaceful beneath the moon, preserving the quiet character associated with the goddess. Many temples dedicated to Artemis stood close to natural surroundings instead of crowded urban centers. Their columns overlooked forests, rivers, or coastal landscapes where gentle breezes carried the sounds of birds and flowing water. Worship there blended naturally with the environment. The temple did not replace the wilderness, but rested beside it, acknowledging that sacredness already existed in the land long before stone buildings were raised. Greek myths often remind listeners that wisdom includes knowing when not to act. Artemis represents this quiet restraint with unusual clarity. She does not rush toward conflict, nor does she seek constant attention. Instead, her stories frequently pause within moments of observation, stillness, and careful balance. Such calm becomes its own quiet strength. The forests remain healthy because they are not endlessly disturbed, and silence itself becomes something worthy of protection. The gentle distance surrounding Artemis also reflects the changing seasons. Spring flowers appear without command, summer forests deepen in shade, autumn leaves settle softly, and winter brings peaceful clarity to mountain air. The goddess remains connected to each quiet transition. Nothing is hurried, and nothing lingers beyond its proper time. Nature follows its own patient rhythm, inviting respectful observation rather than interruption. Across centuries, artists often portrayed Artemis standing alone beneath trees or beside calm waters. These images emphasized serenity instead of grandeur. A single figure surrounded by open landscape suggested confidence without display. Solitude became peaceful rather than empty. In these representations, the goddess needed no audience. The surrounding hills, forests, and moonlit skies formed quiet companions that required neither words nor ceremony. The enduring myths of Artemis gently encourage reverence for quiet places that ask for nothing except respectful presence. Forests, mountains, springs, and moonlit paths remain peaceful because they are allowed to exist according to their own nature. Ancient storytellers returned often to this simple lesson. Distance can preserve beauty, stillness can reveal wisdom, and calm attention may honor the world more deeply than restless movement ever could. As daylight quietly faded behind distant hills, the memory of Artemis remained wherever the moonlight touched the earth. Ancient Greeks believed that forests, mountains, and quiet valleys carried traces of her gentle presence. Even when no temple stood nearby, the peaceful rhythms of nature seemed enough to remind travelers that the goddess watched over places where wild creatures rested without fear. Night softened every sharp outline, leaving only silver paths, cool breezes, and the quiet sounds of leaves moving together beneath the stars. Unlike rulers who sought great cities or crowded courts, Artemis was remembered for her closeness to untouched landscapes. Her stories encouraged respect for places that existed beyond walls and roads. Shepherds, hunters, and travelers often paused before entering dense woodlands, acknowledging that the wilderness belonged first to itself. In this gentle understanding, nature was not something to conquer but something to enter with patience, humility, and quiet attention, allowing every living creature to keep its peaceful place. The moon slowly crossed the heavens with calm certainty, and Artemis became closely associated with its gentle light in later Greek tradition. Its pale glow revealed enough to walk safely without chasing away the mystery of darkness. Valleys shimmered softly, rivers reflected silver ribbons, and distant hills appeared almost dreamlike. The quiet brightness neither hurried nor demanded attention. Instead, it invited slow movement and careful observation, matching the peaceful spirit that surrounded many stories of the goddess. Sacred groves dedicated to Artemis were often left undisturbed, allowing trees to grow for generations without being cut. Birds nested high in old branches, while deer moved carefully through shaded clearings. These protected places reflected an understanding that holiness could be found in living landscapes as much as in carved stone. The silence within such groves became part of their meaning, offering a gentle reminder that respect sometimes required doing nothing more than allowing nature to remain undisturbed. Artists carved Artemis with her bow, yet many peaceful images emphasized her calm posture rather than the moment of pursuit. She stood quietly beside animals, beneath trees, or beneath the open sky, suggesting confidence without display. Her strength rested in balance instead of noise. Ancient viewers could see that careful guardianship required steady awareness more than constant action, and that true watchfulness often appeared almost invisible beneath the calm surface of the natural world. Across generations, families continued to tell gentle stories about Artemis beside evening fires or during peaceful gatherings after the day's work. The tales carried lessons about moderation, respect for living creatures, and the quiet beauty found beyond busy settlements. Each retelling allowed familiar mountains, forests, and rivers to become connected with the unseen presence of the goddess. In this way, mythology blended naturally with the landscapes people crossed throughout their ordinary lives. Many temples dedicated to Artemis were built near forests, springs, or hillsides where natural beauty already inspired quiet reflection. Their columns rose without overwhelming the surrounding landscape, allowing stone and earth to exist together. Pilgrims approached slowly, hearing birds, flowing water, and gentle winds before reaching the sanctuary itself. The journey became as meaningful as the destination, encouraging calm attention long before any offering or prayer was made. The changing seasons also reflected Artemis's enduring connection with the wild. Spring welcomed newborn animals into hidden meadows, while autumn covered woodland paths with soft leaves. Winter quieted the forests beneath cool skies, and summer filled distant hills with gentle sounds carried on warm air. Each season arrived without haste, following rhythms older than memory. These steady cycles echoed the enduring presence of the goddess throughout the passing years. Ancient poets often described peaceful nights as moments when human concerns seemed smaller beneath the broad heavens. Looking upward toward countless stars, listeners could imagine Artemis walking silently across high ridges while the world rested below. The image brought comfort rather than excitement. Her quiet journey reflected the dependable return of evening itself, reminding every generation that calm always followed the busiest daylight hours. Even after centuries passed and old sanctuaries gradually weathered beneath rain and sunlight, Artemis remained alive within stories, songs, and shared memory. Broken columns became homes for wildflowers, while forests slowly reclaimed forgotten paths. Nature continued its patient work without hurry. In this quiet transformation, the goddess seemed no less present than before, carried gently through every breeze that moved across ancient stones beneath the peaceful sky. The gentle independence of Artemis also inspired admiration. She was known for choosing her own path, living freely among mountains and woodlands rather than seeking luxury or constant company. This independence was never portrayed as loneliness. Instead, it reflected harmony with the natural world, where every tree, stream, and creature formed part of a larger peaceful balance that required neither excess nor constant attention. As stars slowly wheeled across the heavens, the forests below remained wrapped in quiet shadows. Owls glided silently between branches, while cool air settled over open fields. Such peaceful scenes matched the enduring character of Artemis more than any dramatic tale. They suggested a world that continued faithfully through every night, guided by familiar rhythms that asked only for patience and gentle observation. The legacy of Artemis endured because it rested upon experiences shared by every generation. Walking beneath trees, hearing flowing water, watching the moon rise, and feeling calm beneath an open sky. These simple moments required no grand ceremony. They quietly connected everyday life with ancient myth, allowing the memory of the goddess to remain present wherever nature continued its timeless and peaceful rhythms. By the end of every quiet night, the stars slowly faded as dawn approached beyond distant hills. Yet the peaceful spirit associated with Artemis lingered within forests, streams, and mountains, awaiting another evening. Her stories left behind no restless urgency, only a lasting invitation to notice the quiet beauty of the natural world. Beneath each returning night sky, the gentle legacy of the goddess continued with the same calm certainty as the rising moon.